have been a plethora of videos about University of Oklahoma and that young woman and how she has used this culture war and making Christians feel like they're being martyred. Hey, we live in a Christian society where all our holidays are Christian holidays. The same people that say, stop being a victim, you're making up scenarios and narratives for you to be the victim, you're buying into victimization, is the same people that will create a narrative about them being victimized in society where they control the narrative. We live in a Christian society that's so Christian. On Sundays, one of the most segregated days in this country, because a lot of us like to praise our Lord and Jesus, Savior Christ in different ways. You see what I'm saying? In different facets amongst people that look like ourselves. And when we start talking about the way in which the Confederates was some suckers, or how some people in the hood would say some bitches, they should have really dropped the hammer down on the Confederacy. We're going to see how white kinship is something that's always played over whatever they say the ethics or morals or what the laws is in this country. But before we get into that, though, it's really specific to get into this. Right now, you have the Trump administration that has literally put on the screen, like literally put in the whitehouse.gov, as well as created an entire force about eradicating anti-Christian bias. There's an anti-Christian discrimination force that was created uniquely by the Trump administration that's going after people that they feel like have been engaging in anti-Christian discrimination. Now, you know, within what I'm doing, how I'm doing it, I would like to sprinkle some intersectionality into it. So what we see right now is that with this anti-Christian agenda that these folks have configured, that they've manufactured out of thin air in so many instances, they using it to push the ram against the LGBT community as well as whiteness. Now, in this instance, this student, this graduate assistant, they gave this, woman a 0, and they gave her a reason about how she didn't follow the rubric. Her identity is being sensationalized for being trans. And of course, that is, if you look up the conservative way that they're talking about what's going on, is that we have this, why would University of Oklahoma allow for this demonic professor to even teach in the first place? And they forefront this professor or this graduate assistant being trans. These folks then got so masterful in being able to create different narratives that they figured out how to even get Black Christians to buy into this because, hey, the Bible say we shouldn't be dealing with, these trans folks. It's ungodly. And that's why I think I encourage y'all to really get into biblical theologians that are not only progressive, but that are also being real with what the text actually says. And it's also done the etymology work in terms of how words have been translated and how over time we've been able to transcend how we teach what it means to say it with your mouth and believe in your heart and you will be saved. South of Romans 10:9, I believe the verse is what it is, which also comes to something very back to that damn paper. She didn't state any of the Bible verses that she put in it. As a freshman at any university in gen ed class, when you're going to English. As a matter of fact, that's like in high school, you're taught that at a research paper, you cannot state "I believe." Well, I believe that's not a research paper. Getting into this though, to make sure the narrative is not lost. Right now, there's been a sentiment that's being created that says that we have to put tax dollars and we have to put police force and create vigilance around Christians being discriminated against. And what happened to the University of Oklahoma would definitely been sensationalized to justify what the White House has put on their page when it comes to eradicating anti-Christian bias. But I know I've made some claims and I feel like I haven't given some good warrants, you feel me, as a former debate person. So some of y'all might be asking yourself, how in the hell does anti-Christian bias, how does that serve as racial dog whistles? Shout out to Washington State University. They did this amazing study that I think that, it's going to be something nice for us to really zoom into for this segment right here. The University of Washington study published on online March 20th showed that the white and Black Christians perceived a politician concerned about anti-Christian discrimination as caring more about anti-white bias than being more willing to fight against white people and less offensive than one Christian anti-white bias. Or I'm gonna say it different, right? Say different. This study just showed that white Christians and black Christians interpret what white people, white politicians talk about as being anti-Christian as something completely different. A lot of black Christians have racial literacy. They have the ability to read and write situations pertaining to race. And they understand that when Donald Trump and all of them MAGA Christians in this instance talking about anti-Christian bias, they engage in they're talking about whiteness. But there are some of our favorite gospel singers in the black community, some black churches that will align themselves with the white supremacist totem Confederate flag supporters in the name of the Lord, in the name of being pro-life and against abortion. So just, to say it right here, I said, last I read it crankly, so I'm trying to read again. I promise I got 2 master's degrees, but that Oklahoma education value is showing how I'm reading this shit, so we're going to do it again, man, because I was a Hall of Fame policy debater. This study showed that white and black Christians perceived a politician concerned about white anti-Christian bias as caring more about anti-white bias than being more willing to fight for white people as less offensive than being more concerned about anti-white bias. Black but not white Christians saw politicians distressed about anti-Christian bias as less likely to fight for black people. Black Christians saw politicians distressed by anti-Christian bias as less likely to fight for black people. Research over me search. The researchers also found that reading about anti-Christian bias led white Christians, not black Christians, to perceive more anti-white bias. Do we think it's ironic that this Oklahoma student went to Turning Point USA? Yes, Charlie Kirk's Turning Point USA. Went to the Oklahoma chapter and rung the alarm and cried. Like, think about the way in which white women have always been able to mobilize their tears to get white men to act and reinforce white supremacist values. In this instance, this student has acted as a Karen, and her proverbial white, and you know what? She probably did cry for real. You feel me? Her white woman tears has now sustained white Christian values that's obviously anti-black at its core. Like, it's showing that it's obviously at. You feel me? And it's showing right here. These results suggest that talking about anti-Christian bias provide a more palatable way for politicians to signal allegiance to white people. These are not my words. These what the researchers found. What Ben Shapiro always say? Facts don't care about your feelings.